Evelyn Amelia was taken aback by the notion that kindness could be perceived as a flaw. When a weary cowboy unexpectedly arrives at her parched ranch, begging for water, she offers assistance without a moment's pause. What could possibly lead to a line of armed men encircling her property the following day? A sharp gunshot shattered the tranquility of the morning, causing crows to take flight from the lifeless oak tree. Evelyn Amelia knelt beside the cattle trough, her heart pounding fiercely within her chest. Yet it wasn't the threat of raiders or outlaws. It was merely the old hunting rifle misfiring as young Owen attempted to frighten away the coyotes that had been watching their chickens. "For heaven's sake, young man!" Evelyn exclaimed, rising from the ground with determination. "You almost took my breath away." Owen peeked around the corner of the barn, her freckled face coming into view. His expression hung in a delicate balance, teetering between pride and shame. "Apologies, Miss Evelyn, but I have won. The wicked old coyote won't return." Evelyn cleaned her soiled hands on her apron and gazed intently at the far-off hills. The summer of 1885 transformed the Colorado Plains into a desolate brown expanse. The locals referred to it as the most severe drought in 3 decades. 3 neighboring ranches had already succumbed, their owners packing wagons with whatever belongings remained unsold to settle debts. "We must conserve our ammunition, not squander it on coyotes," she said in a gentler tone now. Owen wasn't her son. He was merely an orphan who had arrived last winter in search of work. Yet despite that, he had woven himself into the fabric of her family. The young lad lowered his gaze. "The Jackson place stands vacant now. I observed them departing yesterday. Mr. Jackson mentioned that we would be next." Evelyn experienced an unsettling chill, even amidst the sweltering heat. The Jacksons were friends, decent folks with double the cattle she owned. Their leaving rendered her ranch even more secluded in this vast expanse, 15 miles away from the nearest town. "Mr. Jackson is unaware of our spring," she responded, infusing her voice with a sense of assurance. The concealed spring that emerged from the depths below, nourishing the modest creek that flowed behind her land, was her clandestine advantage. As fellow ranchers observed their water holes drying up into parched earth, her cattle continued to enjoy fresh, clean water. "Now set that rifle aside and lend me a hand with the pump repair. The kitchen barrels must be filled before midday." While they toiled, Evelyn noticed Owen stealing anxious glances at the horizon. "What is it exactly?" she inquired. He pointed and said, "Dust? A presence approaches." Evelyn squinted against the sunlight, her gaze fixed on the small plume of smoke ascending from the eastern path. These days, visitors had become a rare occurrence. Many people were preoccupied with the struggle for survival to engage in social interactions. Her hand instinctively reached for the pocket where she stored her husband's pocket watch, along with the small derringer he had insisted she learn to use after he departed for the war and never came back. She whispered, "Go inside and grab my shotgun. It might be those cattle rustlers that Sheriff Miller cautioned us about." Owen dashed toward the cabin as Evelyn adjusted her worn blue dress, hoping to shed the appearance of the beleaguered rancher she had become, the widow Amelia. She was summoned in town, at times evoking sympathy, at others inspiring respect. Yet always lingering was the silent inquiry of how much longer she could endure on her own. The rider emerged from the shimmering heat, swaying gently in his saddle. From afar, Evelyn sensed that something was amiss. The horse ambled along, its head drooping in a languid manner. The man leaned heavily, grasping the saddle horn as though it were his sole anchor in a turbulent sea. "Owen," she said, "opt for water instead." The unfamiliar horse came to an abrupt halt, just 20 yards away from the dwelling. The creature's sides rose and fell with fatigue, foam dotting its lips. The rider donned attire that surpassed the typical garb of a cowhand, featuring a sleek black vest adorned with silver buttons layered over a shirt that had seen better days, and leather chaps that likely represented a month's worth of hard-earned pay. Yet his expression revealed another tale, sun-scorched and flushed, with lips chapped and bleeding, and eyes struggling to focus as Evelyn moved closer with care. "Water," the man croaked, his voice barely rising above a whisper. Evelyn paused for just a brief moment. Raiders would not arrive solo, and thieves would not perish from lack of water. She hurried ahead as the unfamiliar figure began to slip from his mount. "Owen, please bring that water quickly." The man carried more weight than his appearance suggested. With great effort, Evelyn lowered him to the ground, seeking refuge from the sun's harsh rays under the shelter of her porch, his skin pressed against hers, radiating heat from fever and exposure. "Present!" Owen extended a dipper of water towards them, spilling half of it onto the ground. The unknown figure reached for it with quivering fingers. Evelyn guided his hand, ensuring he sipped at a measured pace. "Take small sips," she advised. "Overindulgence can lead to discomfort." Following the third dipper, clarity flickered back into the man's deep blue eyes, now surprisingly sharp, as they locked onto Evelyn's face. There was something in that gaze that abruptly drew her attention to her untamed hair and the smudges of dirt on her cheeks. "Thank you, ma'am," he said, his voice carrying a rough edge yet refined by the polished accent of someone schooled in the East. "I think you might have just changed everything for me." "Anyone would have done the same," Evelyn responded, feeling uneasy under his intense gaze. The man gave a subtle shake of his head. "Not during these times. Not when water is so valuable." He tried to rise, teetered precariously, and then collapsed back down. "Please excuse my lack of decorum. Matthew Blackwood, at your disposal." The name hit Evelyn with the force of a punch. Blackwood, proprietor of the expansive Double B Ranch nestled in the Eastern Valley. The individual who had been acquiring faltering ranches for mere cents on the dollar. The man whose proposals she'd been discarding into the flames for months without taking the time to read them. "You're quite distant from your estate, Mr. Blackwood," she remarked, her tone turning frosty. He examined her features, a flicker of understanding lighting up his gaze. "It seems you are Evelyn Amelia." Owen lingered close, perplexed by the abrupt strain in the atmosphere. "Excuse me, Miss Evelyn? Do I need to hydrate more?" "No," she stated with conviction. Then her demeanor relaxed. "Indeed, but this time it's for his horse." As Owen guided the weary creature to the trough, Blackwood observed with admiration. "You have quite the handsome young man there. He is employed by me," Evelyn clarified. "His parents passed away during the influenza outbreak last year." Blackwood inclined his head, his face a mask of inscrutability. "Yesterday, my companions and I found ourselves apart. While I was inspecting the western boundary, my canteen unexpectedly developed a leak. I believed I could reach Cottonwood Creek. However, Evelyn completed his thought, noting that Cottonwood had been dry for weeks. I made a discovery." His eyes roamed across her humble ranch, the quaint cabin, adorned with a vegetable garden shielded by burlap shades. The barn, its roof sagging under the weight of time. The corral where her 30 remaining cattle gathered in the cool shade. "Your location appears to be doing better than many others." The observation held a subtle tension that left Evelyn feeling unsettled. "We managed to make it through. Your cattle appear to be in better condition than any I've encountered in the last 20 miles, he continued. "That's a remarkable accomplishment, given the circumstances." Evelyn folded her arms across her chest. "Mr. Blackwood, please feel free to stay here until you're ready to continue your journey. However, I have no desire to sell. Never, not at any time." To her astonishment, a smile graced his weathered lips. "Mrs. Amelia, at this moment, I find myself too feeble to even ask for a glass of water, much less to discuss a ranch." His demeanor shifted to one of gravity. "I must confess, your property possesses certain attributes that have piqued my interest." "The spring," Evelyn stated without any inflection. His eyebrows arched ever so slightly. "Your approach is straightforward." "Thank you for that." A low rumble of thunder broke the silence between them. Menacing clouds gathered ominously above the western hills. The initial hint of rain after a long dry spell. Evelyn noted the approaching storms. "Seek refuge in the barn until the storm subsides. Then I shall guide you back to your place of belonging." Blackwood's gaze lingered on hers, stretching the silence between them. "Your generosity will always be remembered, Mrs. Amelia." There was an unsettling quality in his voice that made her skin crawl. Not a threat precisely, but a commitment that held significance. Evelyn pondered whether she had erred gravely by offering water to this specific cowboy. As though he could sense her inner musings, Blackwood spoke softly. "In moments such as this, companions hold greater worth than riches. Keep in mind that when my associates come searching for me." Unbeknownst to Evelyn, by the next day, those words would transform from expressions of gratitude into something far more ominous. The storm erupted at midnight, rain pounding on the cabin roof with the ferocity of furious fists. Evelyn perched by the window, observing the lightning slice through the sky, casting a bright glow on the barn where Blackwood had at last succumbed to weary slumber. Owen lay peacefully in his trundle bed, unaware of her concerns. "What actions would you take, Miles?" She softly spoke to her husband's photograph resting on the mantel. 5 years have passed since that fateful day at Gettysburg, yet in her quiet moments, she still yearned for his guidance. The unexpected banging on her door almost propelled her out of her seat. "Mrs. Amelia," a man's voice, urgent yet distinct from Blackwood's, clashed with the storm. "Mrs. Amelia, if you would be so kind." With her shotgun in hand, Evelyn moved toward the door with careful steps. "Who is it?" "Eli Wilson, madam. The foreman of Mr. Blackwood. Is he present?" Evelyn gently pushed the door ajar, droplets of rain splashing against her skin. A tall figure loomed on her porch, drenched through with a look of desperation etched across his features. In the shadows of the relentless rain, a handful of riders lingered on their steeds, just out of sight. "He's in the barn," she remarked, recovering from heat exhaustion. A wave of relief washed over the man's expression. "Finally, our search since sundown has come to an end." "How many of you exist?" Evelyn inquired, her fingers clenching the shotgun with determination. "There are 8 of us, ma'am. The others are at the ranch handling a different issue." He cast a fleeting look at the weapon she held, then returned his gaze to her expression. "Our intentions are purely benign." Lightning erupted, casting a brilliant glow over the landscape. Men soaked by the rain, riding weary horses, their expressions etched with concern rather than threat. Evelyn has reached her conclusion. "You may take refuge in the barn alongside your superior, but I would appreciate it if you kept in mind whose land you are occupying." Wilson acknowledged with appreciation. "Absolutely, ma'am. Thank you very much, ma'am." Evelyn observed from the window as the men stepped down, guiding their horses toward the barn. 8 unfamiliar figures trespass on her property under the cover of darkness. It contradicted every instinct for survival. Yet, to send them away amidst this tempest seemed just as unjust. She must have drifted into slumber in the chair, for the next moment brought the soft glow of morning light seeping through the windows, accompanied by Owen gently shaking her arm. "Ms. Evelyn." "Dear Miss Evelyn, you must come and see." Confused, she trailed behind him to the porch. The view before her took her breath away. At least 30 riders gathered along the road that wound toward her ranch, with even more emerging over the rise. Individuals clad in stylish raincoats and broad-brimmed headwear. A few prominent pack horses burdened with gear she couldn't recognize. "Oh my goodness," she murmured. "Owen, please return indoors." The boy dismissed her, gesturing with enthusiasm. "Behold all those magnificent horses. And firearms. Are those individual soldiers?" Just as Evelyn was about to respond, the barn door swung open. Blackwood appeared, looking surprisingly revitalized, accompanied by the foreman, Wilson. They halted abruptly at the sight of the riders drawing near. "Those aren't my men," Blackwood stated, his voice laced with tension. Wilson squinted against the bright morning sun. "That's Rollins and his crew. It seems they might have tracked our movements." "Rollins!" Evelyn felt the parched sensation in her mouth. All across the territory, whispers of the Rollins gang rustlers echoed, recounting the grim tale of 3 ranchers who had met their end last spring. Blackwood faced her, his expression somber. "Mrs. Amelia, bring the boy inside." "Secure the entrance and remain inside until I summon you." "This is my ranch," she insisted. "I refuse to be confined within my own home." "Kindly." Something in his gaze silenced her protest. "These men have no intention of making friendly visits." To underscore his argument, a rider surged ahead from the group, racing toward them. Evelyn spotted Sheriff Miller from town, his normally flushed face now drained of color, revealing the weight of his stress. "Blackwood!" he shouted, yanking his horse to a sudden halt. "The flames are consuming your ranch." Rollins struck at the break of day, departed with a portion of your livestock before you even realized it was occurring. Blackwood's expression turned as unyielding as granite. "Are there any casualties?" 2 of your men are injured, but, as far as I'm aware, there are no fatalities. However, they are currently moving your cattle across the border." Wilson muttered a string of curses quietly to himself. "That clarifies why we were unable to locate you yesterday. It seems they were observing, biding their time for the ranch to be left vulnerable." The last of the riders had arrived at the yard now. Not Rollins' men, Evelyn recognized with a sense of relief, but rather Blackwood's ranch hands mingled with volunteers from the town. Their expressions revealed a blend of fatigue and frustration. "Mr. Blackwood?" one called out. "Johnson mentions that they are guiding the herd through Serpent's Pass. Should we push ourselves, there's a chance we can intercept them before they cross into our territory." Blackwood nodded, his thoughts clearly in a whirlwind. "What is the number of men under Rollins' command?" The sheriff replied, 15, perhaps 20, equipped for success. "We can meet that," Wilson stated. Evelyn took a bold step ahead. Serpent's Pass is a 3-hour journey from here, yet a shortcut through Hayes Canyon could reduce that to just half the time. Every gaze was fixed upon her. Blackwood's expression remained inscrutable. "Are you familiar with the area, Mrs. Amelia?" "For 5 years my husband and I herded cattle through these hills before he left for war." She gestured toward the west, indicating a faint opening in the far-off foothills. The canyon slices directly through to the northern side of the pass. Rollins wouldn't take the chance. It was too tight for a sizable herd. Yet riders could navigate their way through. Blackwood shared a look with Wilson. "Would you be able to create a map for us?" Evelyn paused for just a brief moment. Regardless of the circumstances, she refused to remain idle while wrongdoers thrived. "I might," she replied with a measured tone. "Alternatively, I could demonstrate it for you." In perfect harmony, Blackwood and the sheriff declared their resolute refusal. "Absolutely not, Miss Evelyn." Owen clutched her skirt. "It's not possible." She softly unwound his fingers. "Owen, these men require nourishment and hydration before they set out on their journey. Could you guide them to all the locations?" The boy's bottom lip quivered, yet he nodded with courage. Blackwood drew Evelyn away from the crowd, his tone hushed and filled with intensity. "This battle does not belong to you, Mrs. Amelia." "Is it not?" She responded with a rebuttal. "If Rollins manages to escape the consequences of this, which ranch do you suppose will be his next target? A woman alone, tending to her modest flock, with just a young boy to safeguard her." His jaw clenched. These individuals pose a significant threat. "And I'm not a damsel in distress," Evelyn asserted, raising her chin defiantly. "Moreover, without a guide, you could easily overlook the entrance to the canyon. It remains concealed unless you possess the precise knowledge of where to search." He gazed at her face for an extended moment. What he witnessed there surely changed his mind. He called out, "Wilson, locate a suitable mount and an armament for Mrs. Amelia." Wilson appeared taken aback, yet chose not to contest. Evelyn insisted that Owen remain here. "Sheriff Miller, could you please?" The sheriff nodded in agreement, promising to keep a watchful eye on him. "My deputy and several of the seasoned men will remain behind just in case Rollins has left anyone on watch." As the men readied themselves to depart, Evelyn quietly returned to her cabin. She swiftly donned her riding attire. She wore split skirts that she had crafted herself, paired with a man's shirt that she had tailored to her own fit. From beneath a loose floorboard, she unearthed Miles's Colt revolver, along with a small leather pouch filled with ammunition. As she stepped out, Blackwood stood there, grasping the reins of a robust bay mare. His eyebrows arched at her outfit, yet he remained silent. "Prepared?" he inquired plainly. With a final inspection, Evelyn secured the revolver into her belt. The heaviness of it felt both known and foreign, evoking memories of grimmer times when she had watched over her cattle in the chaotic aftermath of the war. She never anticipated that those skills would come into play once more. "Prepared," she replied, climbing onto the horse with a skillful grace. As they rode out, Evelyn threw a final look back over her shoulder. Owen lingered on the porch, appearing diminutive and apprehensive next to the sheriff. The ranch that had encompassed her entire existence for 5 years now appeared delicate, exposed in a manner she had previously been unwilling to recognize. "We'll return by nightfall," Blackwood stated, as if he could sense her unspoken concerns. With a determined nod, Evelyn shifted her gaze to the path that lay before her. "Mr. Blackwood, there's a crucial detail regarding Hayes Canyon that you need to be aware of." "What is that?" "The last time I passed through, I noticed a mountain lion den close to the western entrance." She caressed the firearm resting at her hip. "It's important to be ready." Blackwood's smile held a somber edge. "Mrs. Amelia, I'm starting to sense that there's a depth to you that isn't immediately apparent." "Mr. Blackwood," she responded with a similar seriousness, "you truly have no idea." As the group of riders galloped across the rain-soaked plains toward the far-off hills, Evelyn experienced a peculiar thrill surging within her. For the first time since Miles's death, she was truly living. She stood resolute against the looming threats to her sanctuary. And somehow, the man she had viewed as her adversary just the day before had transformed into an unforeseen companion in that struggle. Unbeknownst to her, this unexpected partnership would face trials by fire before the day came to an end. Or that Blackwood's genuine motivation for his fascination with her ranch was much more intricate than the spring water he urgently sought. "Wait a minute!" With a swift motion, Evelyn lifted her hand, signaling the line of riders to come to a stop. They had been galloping fiercely for almost 2 hours, the horses' sides glistening with sweat. The slender path meandered through majestic red rock formations that shielded the harsh midday light, enveloping the surroundings in a refreshing shade. Wilson, trailing closely behind Blackwood, whispered something inaudibly. A few of the men cast anxious looks at one another. They found themselves deep within Hayes Canyon, a territory that few among them had ever dared to explore. "What is it exactly?" Blackwood inquired, maneuvering his horse to ride parallel to Evelyn's. She gestured toward a faintly discernible path veering off to the right, ascending along the canyon's edge. "We should head in this direction." "That's barely a path," one of the cowboys objected. "Our horses are unable to ascend that." "They can, if we guide them," Evelyn responded, already getting off. "Unless you'd rather head directly into Rollins' scouts." The complaints were effectively quelled. Evelyn removed her gloves, securing them at her waist. The coarse stone radiated warmth beneath her touch as she started her ascent, guiding her horse by the reins. "The primary canyon path is under observation." As Blackwood joined her, she began to explain. "By chance, Miles stumbled upon this route while we were in pursuit of a wandering calf. A path ascends to a ridge that provides a stunning view of Serpent's Pass. From that vantage point, we can observe everything while remaining unnoticed." The ascent was arduous. Loose stones tumbled down the steep slope, sending up clouds of dust that adhered to their sweat-soaked garments. One of the horses hesitated midway, almost yanking its rider off the precarious ledge. Ultimately, all 30 of them made it to the summit, stepping onto a level expanse of stone bordered by scraggly juniper. Evelyn edged closer, lowering herself to her stomach and inching forward the final few feet. Blackwood mirrored her actions, stretching out beside her as they both gazed over. Before them lay Serpent's Pass, a meandering expanse of grassland nestled between rugged cliff faces amidst the landscape. A vast herd of cattle meandered, numbering at least 300, their backs creating a flowing tapestry of brown and white. Mounted riders surrounded the herd, ensuring the animals remained closely grouped. "Rollins?" Blackwood inhaled sharply, his expression tightening as he identified the man leading the way. "Behold my herd of cattle." Evelyn observed the scene intently, tallying swiftly. "I count 16 men, Rollins included, fully equipped. Our numbers surpass theirs by almost a factor of 2. Indeed, she noted, they hold the advantageous position at the far end of the pass. Observe the riders stationed atop the bluffs. They would eliminate us one at a time if we rushed in from this angle." Wilson had quietly made his way up beside them. "She is correct, Supervisor. The setup for the ambush is flawless." For an extended period, Blackwood remained quiet, his gaze fixed on the pilfered herd. At last, he inquired, "Mrs. Amelia, do you have any recommendations? Your familiarity with this land surpasses that of anyone else here." Evelyn sensed the intensity of every man's stare. She had never anticipated finding herself devising battle tactics alongside a band of cowboys, and there she stood. She surveyed the landscape, recollections of her moments with Miles rushing to the forefront of her mind. She spoke slowly, indicating that a box canyon lay about a half-mile ahead. "The cattle will need to be directed through that area. This is the sole route to the border. The walls rise sharply, yet her gaze followed a faint outline along the canyon's eastern rim. Another trail awaits, even steeper than the one we just ascended. It descends into the canyon from the rear. A small group could take position there before the herd arrives, cutting them off," Blackwood concluded, a glimmer of hope igniting in his eyes and generating enough chaos to redirect the herd back this way. Wilson contributed. "Compel Rollins to engage in battles on 2 fronts." Evelyn gave a slight nod. "However, we must act swiftly. As soon as the cattle make their way into that canyon, we forfeit our upper hand." Blackwood was retreating from the precipice. "Wilson, Gather 20 men and take the longer route. Establish a distraction at the entrance of the pass. Convince Rawlins that this is our primary strategy. And you, good sir? I will guide 5 men and Mrs. Amelia along the back trail she referred to. Blackwood's eyes locked onto Evelyn's. If you are prepared to guide us. I am, she declared with conviction. As Wilson chose his team, Blackwood discreetly took Evelyn aside. This poses a significant risk, Mrs. Amelia. If anything happens to you, it was my decision to be here, she interjected. It is my understanding that could potentially rescue your livestock. Moreover, she remarked with a constrained smile, I possess superior marksmanship compared to many of your cowboys. A glimmer of amusement danced across his features. Really? Miles ensured it was done. Something inscrutable flickered in Blackwood's gaze. Your husband seems to be an extraordinary individual. He certainly was. The unadorned phrases bore the heavy burden of 5 years of sorrow. Just as Blackwood was about to reply, one of his men stepped forward. We're all set, boss. After a final nod to Evelyn, Blackwood pivoted to issue his instructions. The primary group would navigate a broad arc, making their way toward the pass from the clearest route. In the meantime, Evelyn would guide Blackwood and 5 others along the concealed path to the ambush location. A hawk soared above, tracing circles in the vibrant blue expanse, its call resonating against the rugged canyon walls. Evelyn observed it for a moment, recalling how Miles had often remarked that hawks brought good fortune. She wished he was correct. The compact team moved with minimal baggage, bringing along just their arms and water containers. The path Evelyn recalled was even more constricted than she remembered, compelling them to proceed in a single line. On 2 occasions, they found themselves retracing their steps as landslides had obliterated parts of the trail. The sun blazed overhead, creating streams of sweat that trickled into Evelyn's eyes and clung her shirt to her back. How much longer? After an hour of arduous travel, Blackwood inquired. Evelyn gestured towards a prominent rock formation in the distance, situated just past that outcropping. We ought to be capable of doing so. The sharp report of a rifle echoed, the bullet thudding against the stone mere inches from her head. Bits of stone lashed against her face as she instinctively sank into a crouch. Take cover! Blackwood yelled, but everyone had already pressed themselves against the canyon wall. Another shot echoed through the air, followed by yet another. The bullets were intentional. A shot rang out, aimed squarely at them from an unseen vantage point. One of the men remarked that Rawlins must have stationed lookouts. Evelyn leaned against the sun-warmed stone, her thoughts swirling in a frenzy. They found themselves trapped on a vulnerable path, with steep cliffs looming on one side and no shelter in sight. Even more troubling, if Rawlins had caught sight of them, the advantage of surprise would be gone. Behold! A member of Blackwood's crew gestured toward a ledge roughly 50 yards away, where a wisp of gun smoke revealed the shooter's location. 2 cowboys fired back, their shots reverberating through the canyon. However, the sniper was shielded effectively, and their shots merely hit stone. We must go, Blackwood urged, his tone laced with a sense of immediacy. If we remain in this spot, we're easy targets. Onward or backward? Inquired one of the gentlemen. With a momentary pause, Evelyn shut her eyes, conjuring the path that lay before her. She resolved to move ahead. A fork appears in the trail just beyond the upcoming curve. A path descends toward the canyon floor, should we manage to attain it. I'll take the lead, Blackwood declared, adjusting his revolver with a steady hand. As I begin to shoot, you all make a dash for that curve. Are you prepared? Without giving anyone a chance to object, he sprang forward, unleashing 3 quick shots aimed at the sniper's location. The man fired back, yet his shots veered off course as he had to take cover. At that moment, Blackwood exclaimed. Evelyn rushed ahead, her boots skidding on the loose gravel beneath her. The rest trailed closely, each one crouched low. More shots echoed above. One of Blackwood's men shouted in pain, gripping his arm, yet continued to press on. They arrived at the bend just as Blackwood's weapon went silent. He plunged for shelter next to them, gasping for air. Is everyone okay? The injured man nodded solemnly, securing his bandana around his bleeding arm. Merely a scratch, Chief. Evelyn glanced warily around the rock. The trail diverges just up ahead, yet we must traverse 20 yards of open path first. Blackwood stated that he counts 1 shooter, perhaps a couple. Certainty eludes us. Out of nowhere, the distant echoes of gunfire erupted, a cacophony of chaos. The diversion orchestrated by Wilson had commenced. The anguished cries of the cattle reverberated from the depths of the canyon. "It's now or never," Evelyn declared. As they were preoccupied, Blackwood gave a nod. "This isn't a situation where ladies come first, Mrs. Amelia. I'll take the lead, and then it's your turn." Before she had the chance to protest, he was already in motion, swiftly crossing the open stretch of the path. The marksman took 2 shots, yet both went astray. Next, it was Evelyn's moment to shine. With her heart racing in her throat, she sprinted forward, anticipating the searing force of a bullet at any moment. Yet she arrived at the far side unscathed. One after another, the others trailed behind, with the injured man bringing up the rear. As he faltered the last few steps, a shot sent dust flying at his heels. Yet he reached a place of safety. The path diverged ahead, one route tracing the edge of the canyon, while the other wound its way down to the valley below. The echoes of gunfire and the frantic cries of cattle intensified from the depths below. "What's going on down there?" one of the gentlemen pondered. Evelyn began her descent along the rugged path. "There's just one method to discover the truth." The descent proved perilous, with loose shale slipping away underfoot. On 2 occasions, Evelyn came perilously close to falling, her safety ensured solely by Blackwood's swift grasp on her arm. At last they arrived at the canyon floor, seeking refuge behind a chaotic pile of fallen rocks. The scene unfolding was pure chaos. Wilson's crew had clashed with Rollins' gang at the distant edge of the canyon. Gunfire reverberated against the stone walls as men sought refuge behind rocks and scraggly trees. The cattle, ensnared in the turmoil, were in a state of distress, desperately attempting to escape the grasp of their human caretakers. Some had already dispersed, darting in frantic loops. "There's Rollins," Blackwood remarked with a serious tone, gesturing towards a tall figure on a black horse, barking commands as he worked to keep the herd advancing. "And there's our opportunity," Evelyn said, gesturing toward a slender opening between the cattle and the canyon wall. "If we can navigate through there and intercept the leaders of the herd, we can redirect them back toward Wilson," Blackwood concluded. "Sharp observation, Mrs. Amelia." Just as they were on the verge of action, Evelyn seized Blackwood's arm. "Hold on. Something seems off." He traced her line of sight to a cluster of Rollins' men who had detached themselves from the central skirmish. They had ceased their efforts to manage the cattle. Rather, they were placing something at the foot of the canyon wall. "What are they up to?" a cowboy inquired. A chilling awareness settled over Evelyn. "Explosive," she murmured. "They are set to collapse the canyon wall." Blackwood's complexion drained of color. "Wilson and his team are positioned right beneath that area." "They'll be buried alive," Evelyn declared, already in motion. "It is imperative that we alert them." However, the moment had passed. As she continued her words, Rollins' men were igniting fuses. The charges were established. "Blackwood!" Evelyn's desperate shout was almost drowned out by the tumult of gunfire and the frantic cries of cattle. The fuses had been ignited. With unwavering confidence, Blackwood placed his reins into her hands. "Bring the others back up the trail." Before she could intervene, he dashed forward, not fleeing from peril, but charging headlong into the heart of the conflict, where bullets stirred the earth and clattered against the stone. "What is he up to?" one of the cowboys inhaled sharply. Evelyn observed in dread as Blackwood weaved through the frantic cattle, making his way toward the canyon wall where wisps of smoke indicated the burning dynamite fuses. She understood that he was attempting to prevent the explosion. "We must assist him." She gestured towards the closest men. "Return to that path and alert Wilson's team. Instruct them to retreat. The remainder of you, stay close to me." Without pausing for consensus, Evelyn charged ahead. Miles's revolver was clutched firmly in her hand. The universe condensed into a corridor of noise and activity, the pounding of hooves, the sharp report of gunfire, the bitter scent of gunpowder invading her breath. A bullet zipped by her ear. She shot back instinctively, witnessing a man tumble from his horse. Shock and regret had no place here. For the first time in her life, Evelyn found herself in an actual gunfight, and it was a far cry from the laid-back target practice sessions Miles had guided her through. This was harsh, tumultuous, frightening. Amidst the haze and turmoil, she glimpsed Blackwood fleetingly. He had arrived at the initial dynamite charge and was desperately trying to extinguish the fuse. Yet she could spot at least 3 more, scattered along the canyon wall's base. One of Rollins' men caught sight of Blackwood and lifted his rifle. Evelyn took the initiative. Her shot veered off course, yet it was sufficient to disrupt his focus. Blackwood plunged forward for the next strike, tearing out the fuse with his bare hands. Out of nowhere, a distinct sound pierced the noise. A bugle, sharp and authoritative. Evelyn stole a quick look over her shoulder to observe Wilson's men withdrawing in an orderly fashion, pulling back from their posts along the edge of the canyon. The message had successfully transmitted, yet Rawlins had caught on as well. With a roar of fury, he urged his horse straight at Blackwood, who was still frantically attempting to grab the last two charges. Evelyn shifted her path, traversing the expanse of the canyon floor. If she could reach Blackwood before Rawlins did, time felt as though it was dragging on, thick and slow, like molasses. She observed Blackwood glance up, noticed Rawlins approaching rapidly, witnessed him discard the dynamite and reach for his gun, and saw Rawlins elevate his own firearm. Two shots echoed in quick succession. Rawlins jolted in his saddle yet managed to stay upright. Blackwood grasped his side, crimson spreading between his fingers. Evelyn stood 30 yards away, her eyes fixed on Rawlins as he took aim once more. A fierce triumph etched across his features. Instinctively, she lifted Miles's revolver, steadied her arm as he had shown her, and pulled the trigger. Rawlins' hat was swept away. For an instant, he appeared simply astonished. He then fell sideways from his saddle, landing on the ground with a resounding thud. The last fuses were flickering out. Evelyn arrived at Blackwood's side just in time to catch him as he stumbled, preventing him from falling. "The explosive!" he breathed out in shock. "Time is scarce." With determination, she started to pull him toward the refuge of a towering boulder. "We must seek shelter." They had just set foot on the rock when chaos unfolded around them. The blast reverberated through the canyon, a thunderous sound that felt endless. As a section of the canyon wall gave way, a cloud of dust and debris enveloped the surroundings, with tons of rock tumbling down in a thunderous cascade. With fierce determination, Evelyn leaped over Blackwood, using her body as a protective barrier against the cascade of smaller rocks that fell around them. As the turmoil subsided, she lifted her gaze, choking on the dense dust that permeated the atmosphere. The scenery had transformed. What once was an expansive canyon now lay transformed into a colossal heap of debris. However, the primary impact of the collapse was confined to a single area, precisely where Rawlins had intended, now devoid of Wilson's troops who had withdrawn just in time. "Blackwood!" Evelyn exclaimed, her voice filled with urgency as she turned to the injured man at her side. "Matthew, are you able to hear me?" His eyes slowly opened, a striking blue that remained surprisingly clear, even amidst the pain that marked his expression. "Mrs. Amelia," he whispered. "Evelyn, are you okay?" "Actually, you are." She gently pushed aside his coat, exposing a shirt soaked in blood beneath. "Allow me to take a look." He flinched under her scrutiny of the injury. A bullet skimmed his ribs, causing pain but not endangering his life if they could manage to halt the bleeding. "Have you experienced your initial encounter in a gunfight?" he inquired, a subtle smile playing at the corners of his pale lips. "Is it really that clear? You have been my salvation." His hand sought hers, unexpectedly warm against his pale skin. "Thanks a lot." Before she had a chance to reply, they found themselves encircled by Blackwood's men, grimy and battered, yet largely unscathed. Wilson navigated the throng, a wave of relief washing over him as he spotted his boss, alive and well. "Emma's on the run, Mr. Blackwood." Rawlins' men dispersed at the sight of his collapse. "Johnson is currently gathering the cattle. Any losses?" Blackwood winced as Evelyn secured a makeshift bandage around his ribs. "Two of our team are injured, but thankfully no fatalities. Your warning truly made a difference. It could have turned out far worse." Wilson looked at Evelyn, a sense of admiration shining in his eyes. "What about Mrs. Amelia's shooting?" A whisper spread among the assembled cowboys. Evelyn felt her cheeks flush with embarrassment, accompanied by a sense of pride. Maybe she never anticipated gaining their respect, nor had she been in pursuit of it. In just a matter of hours, everything had transformed. "We must return Mr. Blackwood to the ranch," she declared, assuming control instinctively. "He requires medical attention." "The ranch is a full day's journey away." Wilson brought it to her attention. Evelyn concluded that her place was nearer. "We can care for him there until he is strong enough to journey." She gazed down at Blackwood, who regarded her with an inscrutable look. "If that meets your approval, Mr. Blackwood." "More than satisfactory," he responded gently. While the men coordinated the cattle drive back to Blackwood's ranch, Evelyn and two cowboys assisted Blackwood in mounting his horse. Regardless of his objections, she was determined to ride alongside him, prepared to steady him if he faltered. The journey back was sluggish, marked by numerous pauses whenever Blackwood's energy waned. As they arrived at Evelyn's ranch, dusk was settling in. Owen dashed forward to greet them, his expression a blend of relief and apprehension. "Welcome back, Miss Evelyn." He came to an abrupt stop, his eyes growing wide at the sight of Blackwood's shirt soaked in blood. What transpired? "Owen, go ahead and light the lamps," Evelyn directed, "and start boiling some water. A considerable amount." The boys dashed eagerly toward the cabin. Once they had Blackwood comfortably arranged on Evelyn's bed, despite her insistence on using the only proper mattress in the house, Owen had prepared hot water and laid out fresh linens. Wilson sent one of his men to retrieve the doctor from town, but Evelyn was skeptical he would make it back before morning. At this moment, it fell upon her to tend to Blackwood's injury, cleaning and bandaging it with care. "Everyone out," she commanded, preparing for action as she rolled up her sleeves. "Owen, please guide these gentlemen to their resting place in the barn." Once they found themselves in solitude, Evelyn carefully sliced through Blackwood's shirt, exposing a deep gash along his ribs where Rollins' bullet had narrowly missed its mark. It bled steadily but in a clean manner, the sort of injury that appeared more severe than it truly was. "You'll survive," she declared, rinsing her hands in the basin that Owen had set up. "Thank you," Blackwood responded, his tone subdued. Evelyn toiled quietly, tending to the wound with whiskey that caused Blackwood to hiss between gritted teeth, before carefully placing a poultice of dried herbs she reserved for urgent situations. As she carefully secured the fresh bandages around his chest, her fingers grazed his skin, and she became aware of details she had previously overlooked. The undeniable strength in his lean physique, the subtle mark on his shoulder whispered of past conflicts. "He remarked that you excel at this." "Miles returned from the war in a worse state," she remarked absent-mindedly, then lapsed into silence once more. As she completed her task, Blackwood seized her hand, preventing her from pulling away. "Evelyn," he murmured softly, finally addressing her by her true name. Today was more than just about the cattle. She calmed the fluttering sensation in her chest. "Could you clarify what you mean? I have indeed been acquiring ranches. However, the goal is not to create an empire." His gaze met hers, unwavering and sincere. "This territory is suffering greatly due to the drought. Small ranchers need support to thrive." Yet, he hesitated, as if he were sifting through his thoughts for the right expression. "I am in the process of establishing a cooperative, collaborative assets. Water that is shared. Collaborative earnings." Evelyn collapsed onto the edge of the bed, bewildered. "That's the reason you were after my ranch. The season of renewal." He gave a slight nod. "Not to take it away from you, to integrate it into a broader context. A solution that could benefit all." "Why didn't you just mention that?" A wistful smile graced his lips. "Could you have trusted my words? An unfamiliar person discussing cooperatives and collective earnings?" During these moments, she had to concede that he was correct. She would have brushed aside such chatter as mere embellishments concealing the age-old desire for more. "And now," she inquired gently, "now that we've stood together in battle?" His grip on her hand grew firmer. "I invite you to contemplate an alternative proposal. Not parting with your ranch, but collaborating instead. The water you provide, the cattle I tend, together we shape our future." In the distance, a coyote let out a mournful howl, its solitary voice resonating through the vast expanse of the plains. Evelyn reflected on the vacant ranches and the forlorn expressions of the townsfolk, of Owen, who merited so much more than a tough life on a struggling ranch, of herself, who had been simply enduring for 5 arduous years. After a moment of thought, she finally replied, "I'll think about it. However, this should come only once you've found your healing, and solely if it's a genuine collaboration. Fair conditions." Blackwood's smile radiated warmth, reminiscent of dawn illuminating the vast landscape. "I wouldn't want it any other way, Mrs. Amelia." For the first time since Miles had departed for battle, Evelyn sensed a stirring within her, something that resonated with a thrilling sense of possibility. Not merely for survival, but for a future she had yet to envision. It all started with a simple dipper of water offered to a man in need. I will craft Acts 5 and 6 that advance the narrative with the elements you've requested. Whispers flew through the town like wildfire when news broke that Matthew Blackwood was on the mend at Evelyn Amelia's ranch. 3 weeks had gone by since the confrontation at Serpent's Pass. The town doctor made his rounds each day initially, then shifted to every third day as Blackwood's wound started to mend. Yet, it wasn't the rancher's well-being that sparked the rumors. The gatherings in Evelyn's kitchen were a ritual, with maps sprawled across the table and conversations echoing into the late hours of the night. "She's either selling to him or sleeping with him," declared Mrs. Peterson, the mercantile owner's wife, as she measured fabric for one of her regular customers. No respectable widow would host a man in her home for such an extended period otherwise. Betty Jackson, a customer whose family was among the first to leave their drought-stricken ranch, clicked her tongue. Evelyn Amelia is not the type of woman you might expect. Additionally, Owen will be present as the chaperone. A young boy of 12 without a family? Insufficient oversight. Mrs. Peterson cut through the fabric with an excessive amount of vigor. Take note of what I say. That arrangement feels distinctly off. Outside the shop, Owen leaned in closer to the wall, his freckled face burning with rage. He had been dispatched to town with a list of supplies, yet he found himself lingering, drawn in by the mention of Miss Evelyn's name. At that moment, he regretted his decision. The boy broke free from the wall, striding purposefully toward the bank where Sheriff Miller was engaged in discussion with a group of men. Their voices hushed as Owen drew near. "I assure you, Blackwood's plan is destined to fail." A man remarked that the ranchers in this area are too set in their ways to unite. They would prefer to perish on their own soil than to share it with those nearby. Sheriff Miller gave a slow, disapproving shake of his head. "The world is evolving, Howard. This drought has persisted for nearly 3 years now. Even the most stubborn will come to reason when their children are in need of food." Owen eased his pace, feigning interest in the wanted posters displayed outside the sheriff's office. "That's why he's beginning with the Amelia woman," Howard went on. "Secure one convert, utilize her water as a lure, and observe as the others follow suit." The sheriff expressed his discontent, suggesting it sounded deceitful. "It seems that he is presenting reasonable conditions. There's no equity when a major player engages with small ranchers. Take note, she'll find herself with nothing but empty assurances." Owen had reached her limit. Leaving his tasks behind, he dashed back to Evelyn's ranch, his youthful heart racing with concern. He had become profoundly protective of Miss Evelyn throughout the past year. She had welcomed him when others turned away, embracing him as one of her own, rather than just a worker. The idea of someone exploiting her generosity ignited a fierce anger within him. He arrived at the ranch, panting, and flung the door open without a moment's hesitation. Evelyn glanced up from the ledger book she was engrossed in, her eyebrows arching at his untidy look. "Owen, could you please let me know the status of the supplies I requested?" The boy doubled over, struggling to catch his breath. "Folks around here are buzzing about you and Mr. Blackwood." With harsh words, Evelyn's expression grew tense. "What sort of things?" Just as Owen was about to respond, the bedroom door swung open and Blackwood stepped out. He advanced with caution yet determination, his wounded side evidently mending nicely. His shirt sleeves were rolled up, exposing sun-kissed forearms, and his hair was disheveled as if he had been running his fingers through it. "Mrs. Peterson suggests that you are either compromising your values or—" Owen halted, a wave of embarrassment washing over them. "What else?" Blackwood inquired with a gentle tone. The boy's face turned a deep shade of crimson. "Additional matters. Negative aspects of Miss Evelyn's reputation." With a heavy sigh, Evelyn closed the ledger. Little communities hold on to their histories and speak with pointed words. "I expected that." "There's more to it," Owen continued. "I overheard some gentlemen conversing at the bank. It seems they believe you are deceiving Miss Evelyn, Mr. Blackwood, utilizing her spring water to compel other ranchers to align with your cooperative or something." "Cooperative," Blackwood remarked softly. "That is not what I aim to convey." "What is it that you aim to achieve?" Evelyn inquired softly. "For weeks now we've been discussing this plan of yours. However, I remain uncertain about the practical implementation of it." Blackwood cast a fleeting look at Owen. Next, we returned to Evelyn. "It might be best to carry on this conversation in a more secluded setting." "Absolutely not," Evelyn resolved. "Owen remains. Anything that impacts this ranch has a direct influence on him as well. A spark danced in Blackwood's eyes. Unexpected, accompanied by what could have been admiration. He gave a slight nod. Absolutely. The drought has transformed everything, Mrs. Amelia. The traditional methods of ranching are unlikely to endure another year like this. What I'm suggesting is straightforward in concept, yet groundbreaking in execution. He unfurled a map on the table, securing its corners with cups and a salt shaker. The map displayed the land extending 50 miles in all directions, with ranch boundaries carefully outlined in pencil. This year has already seen the failure of 8 ranches, he continued. Their previous owners parted with them for mere pennies before departing. A further 12 are teetering on the edge. In the meantime, water sources are depleting all around, with the exception of... His finger lightly grazed Evelyn's property, presenting it here. My spring, Evelyn remarked. Indeed, and I've also found 2 more situated on the properties to the north. United, they had the potential to provide sufficient water for a collaborative endeavor. Not numerous small cattle herds, but a single meticulously overseen herd. Collaborative effort, divided earnings. Owen's brow furrowed in puzzlement. But doesn't that imply that everyone is obligated to serve you, Mr. Blackwood? Not suitable for me, Blackwood clarified. Alongside me. Each rancher involved would hold shares in the cooperative, determined by their contributions of land, cattle, and skills. They would participate in key decisions and receive a just share of the profits. It seems almost unbelievable, Evelyn remarked with caution. What's your involvement in this setup? Why not simply acquire struggling ranches and construct your empire through conventional means? Blackwood's demeanor shifted to one of shadowy intensity. I've witnessed that future, Mrs. Amelia, and it resembles a desolate wasteland. In Texas, my father amassed his wealth through that very method. When he passed away, he possessed half the county, yet he was devoid of friends, lacked peace, and the land had been reduced to barren dust from overgrazing. I have no desire for that legacy. Evelyn observed him intently, probing for any signs of dishonesty. In her search, she inquired, So, what part do I play in this elaborate scheme? You would hold a pivotal role as a founding partner. Your spring renders the whole endeavor feasible. He paused, his voice fading, then continued in a softer tone. Without you, the cooperative cannot exist. The stillness that ensued carried the burden of choices still to be determined. At last, Evelyn found her voice. I need to reflect on this more deeply. I require to review documentation, including articles of association, profit-sharing formulas, and the management structure. Blackwood acknowledged with a knowing nod. My attorney has been diligently preparing the necessary documents. They are expected to arrive on the stage tomorrow. Your confidence in my agreement is quite apparent, Mr. Blackwood. A smile graced his lips. Lacking confidence, Mrs. Amelia. Optimistic. Owen glanced back and forth, feeling the undercurrents that eluded his comprehension. Does this imply that we will be remaining at our ranch? Indeed, Evelyn confirmed, extending her hand to tousle his hair playfully. No matter the circumstances, this territory is forever ours. That's absolutely final. Blackwood's gaze locked onto hers. I wouldn't want it any other way. The following morning emerged with a soft, muted light, the sun appearing as a pale orb shrouded by a veil of dusty clouds. Evelyn awoke at dawn, her slumber interrupted by visions of barren land and unfulfilled vows. She discovered Owen at the barn, energetically feeding the horses with an unexpected enthusiasm. Is everything okay? She inquired. Observing the boy's resolute demeanor, he nodded rigidly, reflecting on Mr. Blackwood's words from the previous day. And I just can't trust him, Owen exclaimed. Not entirely, but I can't help but recall how he charged toward that dynamite rather than fleeing from it. An unkind person wouldn't act that way. Evelyn rested her back against the stall door. Individuals are not merely defined by goodness or badness, Owen. They are intricate, just like my father was. Owen seldom mentioned his father, a man infamous for his fiery temper and swift fists, who nevertheless went to great lengths to ensure his family had food during difficult times. Indeed, Evelyn replied softly. Just like your father. The sound of hoofbeats echoed from the direction of the house. Evelyn glanced over to spot Wilson, the foreman from Blackwood, approaching them swiftly on horseback. His expression was somber, and his horse was foaming with exertion. Mrs. Amelia, he called, pulling up suddenly. Is the manager present? Within. What has occurred? Wilson stepped down, the sound of his spurs ringing out as his boots met the earth. He spoke with a heavy tone, indicating trouble. Significant issues ahead. The bank is requesting repayment of loans throughout the region. Yesterday, foreclosure notices were dispatched to a dozen ranchers. Evelyn stood still. What are the reasons? Wilson elaborated on the new ownership. Mr. Halford was bought out by Eastern bankers at First Territorial. They are insisting on the prompt settlement of all unpaid notes. Evelyn felt a heavy weight in her chest. Similar to many ranchers, she held a modest mortgage, acquired following Miles's passing to sustain the ranch. During the harshest days of the drought, she had fallen behind on her payments. Yet she had successfully negotiated terms with the elderly Mr. Halford. Wilson continued, making his way toward the house. I need to speak with Mr. Blackwood. Hold on, Evelyn called out to him. What led you to discover this? Wilson halted, a shadow crossing his face. This morning, armed men arrived at the Double B, carrying documents that demanded a payment of $60,000 by the month's end. $60,000? That can't be done. That's exactly what I expressed. However, those men had no desire to engage in a debate. Wilson pulled back his coat, exposing a bruise blooming on his jaw. They expressed their point with clarity. Evelyn rushed after Wilson, closing the gap as he arrived at the porch. Trailing behind, Owen's youthful features were etched with concern. Within the confines of the room, they discovered Blackwood seated at the kitchen table, an array of papers laid out before him. He glanced up at their arrival, his demeanor changing as he took in Wilson's condition. What transpired? He insisted, standing tall. While Wilson detailed the circumstances, Evelyn observed the expressions on Blackwood's face. She anticipated surprise, rage, maybe even trepidation. Instead, she perceived a different reality altogether, a sense of calculation, succeeded by a bleak assurance. So it has begun, Blackwood remarked as Wilson concluded. This is what I feared. You knew? Evelyn asked, her voice cutting through the air. I can't say for certain, but this pattern feels familiar. Blackwood started collecting the papers with swift, deliberate motions. Financial moguls from the East infiltrate struggling regions, purchase banks, impose foreclosures, and subsequently seize prime real estate at a mere fraction of their true value. Is that something they can accomplish? Owen inquired, his voice barely above a whisper. They already are, Wilson responded with a somber tone. Blackwood fastened his gun belt, inspecting the revolver with a practiced eye. Wilson rode back to the ranch. Instruct the men to begin guiding our cattle northward, steering clear of the primary trails. Utilize the summer pastures. Absolutely, sir. And the gentlemen from the bank, steer clear of them for the time being. I will address this matter through the appropriate legal avenues initially. Wilson nodded and left, creating an atmosphere thick with tension behind him. It was Evelyn who broke it first. This alters the situation, doesn't it? Your collaborative strategy. It adds a sense of urgency, Blackwood responded, sliding the documents into a sleek leather satchel. The ranchers could potentially gather sufficient funds to meet the bank's requirements. Individually, we will be taken down one at a time. Are you part of this? His smile was strained. I'm simply a more prominent target. Evelyn approached the fireplace, carefully removing the aged rifle that was displayed above it. If they dispatch men to your ranch, they'll be arriving here next. Blackwood observed her as she meticulously inspected the weapon with skilled hands. Mrs. Amelia, he spoke softly. Evelyn, join me in town. It's essential to find out what notices were sent to other ranchers, discover precisely what challenges lie ahead. And Owen, I'll remain here to keep an eye on the ranch, the boy said swiftly. If someone arrives, I'll take cover in the root cellar just as you demonstrated. With a moment of uncertainty, Evelyn finally gave a nod. Understood, but be sure to fire 3 shots if any trouble arises, neither an addition nor a subtraction. As they got ready to depart, Blackwood gently placed his hand on Evelyn's arm. No matter what unfolds from here, keep this in mind. I truly stand by my words regarding the cooperative. It's more than just business for me. It transcends the ordinary. The glance exchanged between them was laden with unspoken inquiries, both hesitant to confront. For the first time since Miles's passing, Evelyn sensed the awakening of feelings she believed had been interred alongside her husband, along with the daunting prospect of a life that extended beyond mere existence. The stage from Denver rolled down Main Street, kicking up a cloud of dust, its arrival capturing the attention of curious onlookers despite the sweltering midday heat. No one ventured out for enjoyment during the peak of summer. not across the parched lands where water holes had dried into fissured earth, and buzzards circled in anticipation above the ailing cattle. The well-dressed man who descended from the coach became even more extraordinary. "Who is that?" Betty Jackson murmured to Sheriff Miller as they observed from the boardwalk outside the general store. The sheriff's brow furrowed as he observed the costly suit, the gleaming gold watch chain, and the effortless air of command. "I can't say for sure, but that certainly has the appearance of a banker's style." Within the confines of Halford's now Eastern Territorial Bank, Richard Sumner adjusted his tie and surveyed the unremarkable office with barely concealed contempt. The flaking paint, the time-worn safe, the discolored ledger books. Each detail reinforced his conclusion that this neglected region was ready for a transformation, or more precisely, acquisition. Mr. Crawford spoke to the anxious individual seated at the desk. "My employers are quite unhappy with your progress. Only 3 foreclosures handled in a span of 2 weeks. The board anticipated having at least a dozen by this point." Crawford, previously Halford's assistant manager before the buyout, cleared his throat. "Complications have arisen, sir." "Elucidate." "The ranchers are coming together. Blackwood has engaged in discussions with them, persuading them to combine their resources." Sumner's eyebrows arched in surprise. "Is it Matthew Blackwood, the offspring of a Texas cattle magnate?" "Absolutely, sir. He's suggesting a collaborative agreement." Sumner's laughter echoed, completely lacking any trace of amusement. "How delightfully innocent. Do you think this presents a danger to our interests?" "Tonight they will gather at the Amelia Ranch. Rumor has it they've already gathered nearly $40,000. The banker's enjoyment faded away. "That's almost 50% of what is required to take over the whole valley." "Who is this Amelia character?" "Evelyn Amelia, bereaved, operates a quaint ranch located to the west of town. Boasts the sole dependable spring-fed creek within a 20-mile radius." Sumner's fingers tapped contemplatively on the desk. "Clearly it's about water rights. Blackwood recognizes the worth. It goes beyond that, sir. The way individuals converse reveals a certain intimacy between them." A gradual smile unfolded on Sumner's face. "Is that truly the case? How remarkably intriguing." On the ridge that commanded a view of Evelyn's ranch, Matthew Blackwood brought his horse to a halt. Next to him, Evelyn observed the unfolding scene beneath with increasing apprehension. A gathering of at least 15 wagons and an equal number of riders surrounded her humble cabin. Men gathered in groups, some engaged in passionate debates, while others conversed quietly in close circles. "It seems the news has gotten around," Blackwood remarked. Evelyn acknowledged with a nod. "All individuals who have received a foreclosure notice, along with those who are anxious about potentially being next." "Excellent." Blackwood's expression was resolutely steadfast. "We require figures to combat this." As they descended, gazes were directed their way. Some are filled with hope, while others remain wary. Some were quite antagonistic. Evelyn identified the majority of them. Resilient and self-reliant ranchers who faced the challenges of prolonged drought, illness, and declining cattle prices, now confronting a shared adversary that sought to seize it all. "There he is," shouted Frank Dennison, whose land adjoined Evelyn's to the north, the individual possessing every solution. There was an edge in his voice that caused Evelyn to tense up. Dennison had indulged in some drinks. She could sense it from the flush on his weathered face and the tense angle of his shoulders. Blackwood stepped down from his mount with poise, passing the reins to Owen, who had hurried out to greet them. "No responses so far, Frank. Here are a few concepts that could spark an interesting conversation." "Thoughts that led to my loan being called in," another rancher exclaimed. "The bank was never an issue for me until you decided to create a commotion." Whispers of consensus flowed among the assembly. Evelyn dismounted gracefully, positioning herself next to Blackwood. "That's unjust," she asserted with conviction. "The bank underwent a change in ownership. Fresh proprietors, fresh regulations. That has no relevance to Mr. Blackwood's proposal, has it not?" Dennison faced a challenge. Perfectly timed, isn't it? Initially, he acquires struggling ranches at a fraction of their worth. Then he snuggles up to the widow who possesses the sole reliable water source. The bank is tightening its grip on everyone now. Causes a person to reflect on their true allegiance. Fury ignited within Evelyn's chest. "That's sufficient, Frank. Mr. Blackwood came perilously close to losing his life in his brave attempt to rescue his cattle from Rollins. I was present. I witnessed it." "And now you find yourself in his bed," a voice called out from the depths of the crowd. A silence enveloped the room, punctuated solely by a handful of anxious chuckles. Evelyn experienced a flush of warmth spreading across her cheeks, not out of embarrassment, but from sheer rage. "Who made that statement?" she insisted, advancing with purpose. "Confront me directly and speak your mind." Not a single person stirred. Blackwood rested a soft hand on her arm. "It's of no consequence," he murmured softly. "Let's concentrate on what truly matters." Just as Evelyn was about to reply, Sheriff Miller made his way through the throng of people. He shared the latest tidings from town. A new banker stepped onto the stage today, a gentleman from the East, known as Sumner. Rumor has it he's arrived to directly manage the foreclosures. They are progressing swiftly, Blackwood noted. "Quicker than you might imagine," Miller went on. "A meeting has been scheduled at the bank for tomorrow at noon. It is mandatory for all property owners with outstanding loans to be present." Dennison let a glob of saliva fly into the dry earth. "Is it necessary? Who does he believe he is?" "The individual in charge of your mortgage," Miller stated matter-of-factly. "So is mine," he added, his typical assurance wavering. The atmosphere among the crowd transformed from doubt to a shared sense of unease. Any uncertainties they had regarding Blackwood faded away, overshadowed by the emergence of this new danger. Blackwood took advantage of the opportunity. "This is precisely what I have been cautioning against. When we stand apart, we become vulnerable. United, we have an opportunity." "Could you clarify what you are suggesting?" inquired Eliza Mendez, a keen observer who managed a modest horse breeding venture just south of town. Blackwood gestured towards Evelyn's cabin. "I have the documents ready. Bylaws for a rancher's cooperative, divided equally according to input. Collaborative water entitlements, collaborative pasture use, distributed earnings. Who is in charge of this cooperative?" Dennison faced a challenge, remaining doubtful. "Indeed, we all do," Blackwood responded. "The members have elected the board of directors. No individual rancher possesses a dominant stake, not even I." Evelyn observed the expressions of those surrounding her, observing the shift from doubt to analysis as the seasoned ranchers started to entertain the idea. "What is the status of our debts?" a question was posed. Blackwood elaborated on the consolidation and reorganization. "My attorney thinks that the overall amount can be negotiated if we approach it as one unified entity. The bank seeks swift returns, avoiding lengthy legal disputes." "What if some of us prefer not to participate?" Mendez inquired. Blackwood merely shrugged. "Your decision to make. Yet solitary? Your chances don't seem favorable." As the conversation intensified among the ranchers, Evelyn discreetly led Blackwood away from the crowd. "This is happening too quickly," she murmured. "Individuals are fearful, lacking certainty. Change is often accompanied by fear," he responded. "Indeed, you have a point. We must demonstrate that the cooperative can succeed, rather than merely stating it." On Evelyn's kitchen table, the documents prepared by Blackwood's lawyer lay scattered throughout the cabin. Page after page of intricate legal jargon that would intertwine the destinies of 24 independent ranchers should they choose to affix their signatures. To everyone's surprise, it was Eliza Mendez who took the first step forward. "My husband would have called me crazy," she remarked, dipping the pen into the ink. "Yet he is absent, and I remain present. I prefer to embrace collaboration rather than face inevitable defeat." Her signature, striking and unmistakable, shattered the barrier. Initially, others approached with caution, but soon their resolve began to strengthen. As night descended, 18 ranchers had put their names down, while 3 others expressed their intention to return the following day, after discussing it with their families. Once the cabin was devoid of everyone except for herself and Blackwood, Evelyn took the opportunity to affix her signature to the document. "Why delay?" he inquired, with a sincere sense of curiosity. She responded that she needed to ensure she was signing for the right reasons, not due to fear or any other factors. His gaze locked onto hers. "Are you certain now?" "Indeed." She placed the pen down. This land represented Miles's vision. Preserving it pays tribute to him. However, beyond that, it is the correct choice for Owen's future, for the territory, and for everyone involved. The final wagon was departing into the distance. From her vantage point by the window, Evelyn observed as Owen guided Blackwood's horse toward the water's edge. The boy had gained several inches since Blackwood first appeared at their gate. He bore himself with a new demeanor now, more akin to a young man driven by ambition than an orphan thankful for a roof over his head. "He holds you in high regard," Evelyn said gently. "He has deep feelings for you," Blackwood responded. "His focus is solely on your perspective." Evelyn pivoted away from the window. "Matthew," she stated, intentionally using his full name, "what is on the agenda for tomorrow's meeting?" "Sumner will attempt to instill fear in us, threaten foreclosure, and possibly propose settlements to individual ranchers in an effort to fracture our solidarity. What if that doesn't succeed?" Blackwood's demeanor grew stern. Then the situation could take a turn for the worse. "Individuals like Sumner do not accept defeat with dignity. I ought to accompany you." His reply was prompt and resolute. "The bankers operate under a unique set of principles. They will not shy away from employing any means or individuals as a tool for their advantage." Evelyn tensed up. "I'm not a fragile being requiring safeguarding. Do you recall how we stood against the rustlers together? That's exactly what I'm trying to convey." Blackwood moved in, his voice lowering. "Evelyn, you hold great worth. To the cooperative, certainly, but also to me in ways I never anticipated." The atmosphere around them felt dense, alive with emotions that had been simmering since that initial moment when she had extended a drink to a weary traveler. The moment was abruptly interrupted by a knock at the door. Sheriff Miller lingered on the porch, hat clutched in his hand, his demeanor somber. "I apologize for interrupting you both," he remarked, "but there's an important matter that requires your attention." Sumner's hired guns were probing the town for information about Owen, inquiring about his origins and his background. Evelyn experienced a shiver that was unrelated to the coolness of the night air. What interest could they possibly have in a boy? Miller's gaze flickered with unease. "Rumors circulate that his father's death from influenza may not be the whole story. Whispers suggest he could have been entangled in a bank robbery up north prior to relocating his family here." "That's absurd," Evelyn exclaimed. "I cared for both Owen's parents during their last days. They were indeed decent individuals." "Perhaps that's true. However, Sumner appears quite eager to demonstrate the opposite." Miller cast a quick look at Blackwood. "I believe it's important for you to understand the type of person you'll be encountering tomorrow." Once the sheriff departed, Evelyn began to pace the cramped cabin, her emotions of anger and fear clashing inside her. She voiced her realization that they were attempting to find leverage, something to leverage against us. Blackwood nodded with a somber expression. "Conventional strategies. Undermine those who resist your influence. This is something Owen must remain unaware of. It would shatter him." "Absolutely. However, he must not be left without protection." Blackwood paused to reflect. "Wilson will be here tomorrow accompanied by 2 men, just to be prepared." Evelyn ceased her restless movements. "Negative. I have a more compelling concept." Her thoughts were in a whirlwind, fragments aligning perfectly. "Tomorrow, Owen and I will accompany you to town." "Evelyn, I have just provided an explanation. Hear me out," she cut in. "If Sumner's men come searching this way while we're in town, they'll discover an unoccupied house. Should they search for us in town, they will discover us encircled by a couple of dozen supportive ranchers. In any case, Owen remains unharmed while Sumner receives a distinct signal. We unite as one." Blackwood examined her expression, recognizing the resolve within it. At last he gave a nod of agreement. "Understood. Just make me one promise. If things go awry, make sure to get Owen to safety. No grand gestures, I assure you." Evelyn paused, then said, "And you have to promise me something in return." "Everything. Don't confront Sumner by yourself tomorrow. This battle now involves more than just you. It belongs to us." The glance exchanged between them conveyed a bond deeper than mere agreement. It was an acknowledgement of collaboration that transcended mere business dealings and joint efforts. Whatever unfolded tomorrow would mold not only the destiny of their ranches, but also the very essence of their lives, which had become unexpectedly and irrevocably intertwined. Outside, the initial stars emerged in the deepening sky, luminous beacons of optimism in the expansive void. Evelyn reflected on the countless nights spent on this porch in solitude, contemplating how much longer she could endure the relentless grip of drought, death, and isolation. Now, unexpectedly, the future brimmed with fresh possibilities, daunting in their unpredictability, yet no longer devoid of meaning. It all started with one simple gesture of goodwill. A ladle of water presented to a thirsty soul. I will craft Acts 7 and 8 to bring the story to completion, incorporating the elements you've requested. The Eastern Territorial Bank shone brightly, a gleaming tooth amidst the dusty expanse of Main Street. Fresh paint, new glass windows, and a brass sign heralded its metamorphosis from Halford's modest establishment into something unfamiliar and formidable. Men dressed in formal suits stood watch at the entrance. Their urban attire and steely gazes set them apart as strangers in the quaint frontier town. Owen leaned in nearer to Evelyn as they drew closer. He leaned in closer and murmured, "Those men are hiding guns beneath their coats." "I understand," Evelyn responded softly. "Stay close." The boy nodded, his freckles contrasting sharply with his suddenly pale skin. He was adamant about donning his Sunday shirt and made an effort to control his wild hair with a splash of water. Evelyn nearly smiled at his earnest attempt to appear mature, yet the gravity in his youthful gaze held her back. At 12, Owen grasped more than she occasionally wished he would. Across the street, Blackwood stepped down from his horse in front of the sheriff's office, engaged in a serious discussion with Sheriff Miller. Behind them, wagons and riders kept rolling in, ranchers from all corners of the territory, their expressions hardened with determination. A number of individuals had come with their spouses and older offspring, an unspoken display of solidarity that emerged organically and resonated deeply. "What a remarkable turnout," noted Eliza Mendez as she walked alongside Evelyn. "Sumner is in for a surprise." "Let's see if it leaves a mark," Evelyn responded. The banker's hired men shared furtive looks as the crowd swelled, their hands inching toward their hidden firearms. Evelyn sensed a palpable tension in the atmosphere, heavy and charged like the air before a thunderstorm unleashes its fury. Blackwood made his way across the street to join them, his face a mask of neutrality. "Keep your distance until I summon you," he instructed Evelyn. "If anything feels off, we'll go," she concluded. "My promise lingers in my mind." His hand grazed hers for a fleeting moment. "Excellent." Within the confines of the bank, Richard Sumner watched the throng of people assemble, peering through the slats of the Venetian blinds, frustration contorting his expression. "This was meant to be a straightforward foreclosure process," he snapped at Crawford. "What led to the transformation into a town meeting?" "I mentioned they were putting things together," Crawford said, his voice almost a whisper. Sumner adjusted his tie with meticulous precision. "Regardless of whether it's one rancher or 20, the law stands firmly with us. The notes are approaching their deadline, and it's unlikely they possess enough capital to meet all of them. And if they do," the banker's smile was devoid of warmth, "then we must embrace our imagination." The bank doors swung open right at noon. Sumner positioned himself behind the desk of old Halford, its surface now gleaming like a mirror. Next to him, Crawford fidgeted anxiously, his gaze lowered as his old neighbors entered the lobby. The room swiftly reached its limit, leaving numerous individuals to wait outside. "Gentlemen," Sumner commenced, then halted as a group of women, among them Evelyn and Eliza Mendez, made their way to the forefront. "And ladies, I find it quite intriguing to witness such engagement in what ought to be standard financial affairs. Calling in loans that were previously in good standing is anything but ordinary, Mr. Sumner," Blackwood responded, his voice resonating throughout the room. Sumner experienced astonishment. "Are you Mr. Blackwood, if I may ask? Your reputation is well known, yet I believe you are in error." He gestured to a stack of folders on the desk, indicating that these loans were clearly not in good standing. Missed payments, inconsistent schedules, and informal agreements with the former management. These were the arrangements that sustained this community through 3 years of drought, Sheriff Miller remarked from his position by the door. "Admirable charity, perhaps," Sumner acknowledged with a faint smile. "However, the banking situation is lacking. My employers expect a return on their investment, which necessitates that these notes are adequately managed or the collateral will be seized. It's just a matter of business." "Our enterprise," Blackwood remarked, as he advanced and set a leather portfolio on the desk. "We are ready to tackle this in an official manner." Sumner cast a scornful look at the portfolio. "I presume there's a payment plan of some kind? I must caution you that partial payments will not suffice." "This isn't a payment plan," Blackwood interjected. "Documents of establishment for the Territory Ranchers Cooperative Association, accompanied by a banker's draft for $63,000 to address all existing loans presented in this space." A whisper spread among the gathering. Even Sumner appeared briefly surprised. "$63,000? That comes as a surprise." "The cooperative's inaugural action," Blackwood elaborated, "is to unify and restructure all member debts. We are ready to discuss new terms with Eastern Territorial or any other bank that presents competitive rates. Crawford's eyes grew wide. Sumner's smile grew subtly more restrained. I will, of course, need to verify these funds. Blackwood mentioned that the draft is issued by Merchants Bank of Denver. Don't hesitate to reach out to them for confirmation. What is the origin of these funds? Sumner insisted. Such a substantial amount, amassed in such a short time, raises questions about its authenticity. A tense stillness enveloped the room. Blackwood maintained his composure, yet Evelyn noticed the tension in his shoulders. Are you suggesting we are at fault, Mr. Sumner? Sheriff Miller inquired, his hand positioned nonchalantly close to his holstered revolver. Not at all. Sumner deftly retreated, simply demonstrating careful consideration. He extended his hand towards the portfolio, then hesitated. I see Mrs. Amelia in your group. An essential contributor, I recognize, considering her expertise in water resources. Evelyn moved ahead, acutely conscious of Owen nestled beside her. Indeed. What about the boy? Sumner's eyes locked onto Owen, filled with a sudden intensity. Is that your son? My ranch hand and ward, Evelyn responded calmly. Owen Wilson. Wilson. Sumner's eyebrows arched in a mock display of astonishment. I realized his name was Carter. Owen Carter, offspring of John Carter, once of the Wyoming Territory. Owen tensed up. Evelyn experienced a flutter in her chest. In the town, Owen's true surname was never spoken by anyone. For such an extended period, he had been known simply as the Wilson boy, to the point where many had lost track of that fact. What about it? She inquired, struggling to maintain her composure. Sumner aligned a stack of papers with careful intent. Authorities in Wyoming are seeking John Carter in connection with a bank robbery and a murder case. A significant reward has been announced by the territorial governor for any information that could lead to the capture of accomplices, including family members who may have profited from the stolen funds. The allegation lingered in the atmosphere, thick and palpable. Owen quivered against Evelyn's side. That is not true. The boy erupted with energy. My father never took anything from anyone. Owen, Evelyn warned, wrapping a reassuring arm around his shoulders. Is it untrue? Sumner insisted. I possess sworn statements that indicate a different perspective. Assertions that raise questions about the validity of specific donations to your cooperative's finances. Blackwood's voice sliced through the tension. Should you possess any proof of wrongdoing, Mr. Sumner, please submit it to the appropriate officials. Otherwise, our focus is on the matter at hand. Business and law frequently intersect, Sumner responded with ease. For example, banking regulations prevent me from accepting funds that may have a dubious source. He shut the portfolio without taking a look at what was inside. I believe it's essential to delve deeper before moving forward. Blackwood recognized that as your right. However, our offer is set to expire today. We will be exploring other options for our business starting tomorrow. The loans will stay in effect until they face a legal challenge, a journey that may span months or even years. Blackwood's smile was sharp and narrow. In that period, I question whether your employers will be satisfied with the absence of returns on their investment. Sumner's facade of politeness faltered for a brief moment, exposing the true fury that lay beneath. You believe you've outsmarted me, do you? A collective of humble farmers and the defiant offspring of a Texas cattle magnate. We believe we've safeguarded our community, Evelyn interjected, her voice more resolute than she truly felt. Neither more nor less. Sumner fixed her with a chilling stare. Collective? You hardly had any acquaintance with these individuals just 6 months prior, Mrs. Amelia. Now, without warning, you find yourself jeopardizing everything, including that young man's future. For their benefit, he shook his head. Or is it for the sake of Blackwood? I ponder how your late husband might perceive such unwavering loyalty. The sound of the slap reverberated through the bank, sharp and startling, reminiscent of a gunshot. Evelyn was taken by surprise as her hand struck Sumner's cheek, a vivid red mark appearing on his fair skin. A hush enveloped the room. Sumner lifted a hand to his face, his expression one of genuine astonishment that a woman from the frontier had the audacity to strike him. My husband, Evelyn stated firmly into the quiet, taught me to advocate for what is just. I am indeed doing just that. For an extended pause, everyone remained still. Then Sumner's hired men advanced, their hands reaching for concealed weapons. Sheriff Miller and a number of ranchers reacted similarly. The atmosphere buzzed with an undercurrent of impending conflict. "Good sirs," Blackwood's steady voice sliced through the unease. "A straightforward answer exists in this situation. Mr. Sumner has the opportunity to embrace our proposal, leading to a scenario where all parties depart with a sense of fulfillment. Alternatively, he may decline, and we will all depart to pursue our dealings with the newly formed First Territorial Bank of Rockford." Sumner pointed out that Rockford lacks a bank. "Not at this moment," Blackwood concurred. "I've successfully obtained a charter, engaged a manager, and secured a lease for a building. We will commence operations next week, regardless of Eastern Territorial's involvement." The announcement stirred yet another wave among the audience. Evelyn gazed at Blackwood, coming to the unsettling realization that he had been crafting a contingency plan from the very beginning. Sumner's face burned with fury. Starting a bank isn't something you can just do on a whim. "I think he just did," Eliza Mendez remarked with a hint of sarcasm. Crawford, having maintained his silence during the entire confrontation, finally broke his quietude. "Mr. Sumner, I believe we ought to evaluate their proposal. The board favors swift capital recovery rather than drawn-out legal disputes." Sumner shot a piercing look at his subordinate before shifting his gaze to Blackwood, meticulously weighing his choices. At last he reached out his hand for the portfolio. "I will need to examine the specifics of your cooperative structure and confirm the draft." "Certainly," Blackwood consented. As Sumner withdrew to a secluded office with Crawford, the atmosphere in the room relaxed a bit. Ranchers shared optimistic looks. Owen pulled gently on Evelyn's sleeve. "Miss Evelyn," he murmured with a sense of urgency. "She promised to discuss what he said about my dad later," gently squeezing his shoulder. "Keep this in mind. Regardless of your father's actions or choices, you stand as an individual in your own right. The decisions you make shape who you are." The boy nodded with a grave expression. "Is it true that Mr. Blackwood is launching a bank?" "It seems that way." Evelyn cast her gaze across the room, where Blackwood engaged in conversation with Sheriff Miller and a group of ranchers. She was starting to understand that there were layers to Matthew Blackwood she had not yet explored. After an hour, the doors to the private office swung open. Sumner stepped forward, his composed facade firmly re-established, though a slight twitch betrayed the tension in his jaw. Following thorough deliberation, he declared that Eastern Territorial Bank is ready to accept the Ranchers Cooperative's proposal, contingent upon specific conditions related to future loan servicing. A jubilant cheer rose from the gathered ranchers. Blackwood advanced to grasp Sumner's hand, finalizing the agreement with a gesture that resembled the end of a duel rather than a mere business deal. As the throng started to break apart, Sumner seized Evelyn's arm. "This isn't finished, Mrs. Amelia," he murmured. "This is neither for you nor for the boy, and definitely not for Blackwood." Evelyn held his gaze firmly. "Indeed, Mr. Sumner, it is. You haven't realized it yet." In the glaring sunlight, the ranchers congregated around Blackwood, bombarding him with inquiries regarding the new bank, the cooperative's framework, and the forthcoming actions. Evelyn lingered, observing his effortless assurance as he tackled their worries. Owen lingered next to her, unusually silent. "Will everything truly turn out fine?" At long last, he posed the question. Evelyn gazed down at him, recognizing the boy he remained and the man he was destined to be. She replied candidly, not immediately. "Significant transformations require patience. Indeed, I have faith that it will be." "Is it due to Mr. Blackwood?" "It was due to all of us," she gently pointed out. As the crowd began to disperse, Blackwood approached Evelyn, moving in unison with the ebbing throng. "Prepared to make your way back?" "Residence." The term held a deeper significance in some way. "Indeed," she replied. "However, we must discuss Owen," what Sumner expressed. "I'll hold off until we're alone. Blackwood has completed it for her. There are certain discussions that are best kept away from the bustling heart of Main Street." Evelyn nodded, appreciative of his empathy. No matter the obstacles that awaited them, Sumner's menacing threats, inquiries into Owen's history, the unpredictable fate of the cooperative, they would confront them side by side. That understanding alone empowered her more than she had felt in years. As they climbed onto their steeds, ominous clouds started to swirl on the western horizon. The atmosphere buzzed with the thrilling anticipation of genuine rain, not merely a playful drizzle. Owen lifted his chin, a grin emerging from his previously solemn demeanor. He noted the approaching storm, Excellent, Evelyn responded. The earth requires it. Thus they all experienced a refreshing deluge, purging the remnants of hardship and heralding the dawn of a fresh chapter. For 3 days, rain poured down, not the fierce, destructive type that gouges out gullies and erodes topsoil, but the gentle, persistent kind that ranchers long for in times of drought. Streams overflowed, fields flourished, and cattle raised their heads to catch the enticing aroma of new grass. The longtime residents in the town referred to it as a miracle. Young people attributed the shifts in weather patterns. However, there was a consensus among all. The timing was absolutely perfect. In Evelyn's kitchen, the warm lamplight flickered softly against the encroaching dusk while she expertly kneaded the bread dough with her skilled hands. From her vantage point by the window, she observed Owen in the barn, navigating the stalls with a newfound assurance. The boy had increased in height by 2 inches since spring and embraced his newfound responsibilities with a resolve that occasionally left her feeling a lump in her throat. The discussion regarding his father proved to be challenging yet essential. Indeed, John Carter found himself entangled in a bank robbery in Wyoming, pushed to the brink by escalating debts and the plight of his ailing wife. No, he hadn't taken anyone's life, although a guard had sustained injuries. Crucially, the embezzled funds never reached Colorado. Carter had relied on it to cover the expenses for doctors who, in the end, were unable to save his wife. He then took on honest work until influenza took him as well. There's no reason for shame, Evelyn reassured Owen later on. Your father erred, yet his love for you and your mother was unwavering and profound. Keep that aspect of him in mind. The rhythmic sound of hoofbeats drew Evelyn back from her reverie. She brushed flour off her hands, attuned to the distinct cadence of Blackwood's stallion. In the weeks following the encounter at the bank, he found himself returning often, ostensibly to engage in discussions about business collaboration. Yet the true motivation behind his visits shifted, becoming less about ranching and more about the undeniable connection that intensified with every interaction. He stood in the doorway, hat clutched in his hand, with raindrops shimmering in his dark hair. Good evening, Mrs. Amelia. Mr. Blackwood? She waved her hand toward the table dusted with flour. Perfect timing. Your assistance with dinner is greatly appreciated. His smile flowed effortlessly now, the restraint that had characterized their initial encounters giving way to a warm sense of ease. I fear my abilities in biscuit-making leave much to be desired. Then it's about time you acquired that knowledge. She offered him a pristine apron, one that had belonged to Miles. Every individual should acquire fundamental cooking skills by the time they reach your age. He embraced the challenge with a light-hearted spirit, rolling up his sleeves and attentively following her guidance with the same focus he applied to his professional endeavors. His initial efforts at crafting biscuits were awkward yet sincere, eliciting a true laugh from Evelyn, a sound that had previously been uncommon in this kitchen. What was your experience in Rockford like? She inquired while setting the bread dough in a bowl to rise, assuring that the bank opens officially next week. Peterson has consented to take on the management of it. He had a career in banking back east before relocating to the west for his well-being. Evelyn nodded, fully aware of Blackwood's knack for uncovering the hidden talents that lay within their neighbors. What about Sumner? Returned to Boston, as stated by Sheriff Miller. His employers were not satisfied with the way events transpired in this situation. Good riddance, Evelyn declared with conviction, then hesitated. I have a feeling that Eastern Territorial's fascination with our valley is far from over. Most likely not, Blackwood concurred. However, we find ourselves in a more advantageous position now. The cooperative formed with astonishing rapidity. 26 ranches came together, combining their resources and labor. The initial rainfall served as affirmation, revitalizing fields that had remained parched for far too long. Cattle were being relocated thoughtfully between properties to ensure the best possible grazing conditions. After a long time, individuals began to discuss the future with a sense of optimism rather than defeat. Blackwood remarked on the noticeable progress at the Mendez place as they collaborated closely. Her horses are putting on weight now that they have access to improved grazing. Eliza has consistently shown her skills as a horsewoman, Evelyn responded. She just required an opportunity to demonstrate her abilities. Blackwood cast a fleeting look her way, an enigmatic glimmer dancing in his gaze. Similar to another individual I'm familiar with, the intervals lingered between them, brimming with unexpressed potential. Ever since the encounter with Sumner, There had been a noticeable change in their dynamic. Lines are fading, conventions are dissolving, yet neither had crossed the final threshold that divided friendship from something more profound. A sudden noise from the porch broke the stillness of the moment. Owen stormed into the room, water cascading off his slicker. "Miss Evelyn, Mr. Blackwood, hurry, the lightning is foaling." Lightning was Evelyn's cherished mare, sired by a stallion from the Mendez ranch just months prior. The foal was not expected for another week, yet animals seldom adhered to human timelines. With dinner preparations slipping from their minds, they rushed to the barn. Within the confines of her stall, the expectant mare moved restlessly, her sides rising and falling, eyes filled with a deep, instinctual worry. Evelyn rushed to her side, whispering gentle reassurances while assessing the creature's state. "She has certainly confirmed that she is in labor. Owen, please retrieve the clean straw and the birthing kit from the tack room." The young lad dashed away, filled with enthusiasm to lend a hand. Blackwood approached Evelyn, his presence steady and comforting. "Is there something I can do?" he inquired softly. "Just stay close," she said, unexpectedly revealing her vulnerability. At times, unexpected challenges arise during the foaling process. For the next 2 hours, they toiled side by side in almost complete silence, exchanging meaningful glances and subtle gestures as the storm's work unfolded. Owen observed from a thoughtful distance, eyes filled with eager expectation. Outside, rain tapped rhythmically on the barn roof, nature's music enhancing the timeless story playing out inside. As complications emerged, the foal presenting incorrectly, Evelyn's hands remained steady while her heart raced with tension. Unprompted, Blackwood moved forward, his power enhancing her expertise as they carefully adjusted the position of the struggling foal. As the slender colt emerged into existence, the three humans experienced a profound moment of silent awe. "He's absolutely perfect," Owen whispered as the newborn fought to find its footing on unsteady legs. Evelyn nodded, her throat tightening with emotion as she observed the lightning gently nuzzle her foal. A fresh start, a new chapter, the most basic yet deeply significant wonder. She noticed Blackwood's eyes fixed on her face rather than on the horse. As she faced him, the unspoken inquiry in his gaze conveyed everything. "Owen," she murmured gently, "could you watch over things for a bit? Ensure that both of them are doing well." The boy nodded with a serious expression, fully grasping the weight of the responsibility entrusted to him. "Absolutely. I will stay with them." The rain had finally ceased outside. The scent of damp soil and fresh beginnings filled the air. Stars twinkled amidst the scattered clouds, their glow shimmering in the puddles that dotted the yard. Blackwood grasped Evelyn's hand gently as they strolled toward the house. "You were exceptional in that moment." "We were," she amended. "I wouldn't have been able to do it by myself." They paused on the porch, both hesitant to step inside, to resume the characters they had embodied for months. Allies in commerce, close by, companions, everything but what they were evolving into. "Evelyn," Blackwood started, then paused. "I arrived here this evening with a particular purpose in mind." She waited, her heart racing as if it were caught in a storm. "The cooperative has been formed. The bank is now open for business. The rain has arrived." He offered a faint smile. "All our efforts are coming to fruition." "Indeed," she consented. He shook his head. "Largely due to your influence. To each and every one of us. However, that isn't the crux of my argument." His grip on her hand grew firmer. "With those foundations firmly in place, my thoughts drift towards personal matters." "What sort of personal matters?" Evelyn inquired, although she was aware she had known for weeks, maybe even months. "The type that centers around a man, a woman, and the decisions that shape their destiny." His blue eyes locked onto hers with unwavering intensity. "I am not Miles. I know I can't take his place in your heart, and I wouldn't even attempt to. I truly think we have the potential to create something great together, something that transcends mere business dealings and collaborative efforts." Evelyn gazed over her expanse of land, the territory that had encompassed her entire existence for 5 enduring years. She had struggled to maintain it, almost let it slip away, but in the end, discovered a path to safeguard it through collaboration instead of solitude. She came to understand that her heart might be experiencing the same truth. "Matthew," she murmured gently, intentionally using his full name. "Upon your arrival, parched and desperate, I offered you water, as it was the only just course of action. I was completely unaware that such a straightforward action would alter the course of everything. "Do you wish you hadn't done it?" he inquired. She shook her head in disbelief. "For just a brief moment, I need you to grasp something important. This land has become a part of my very essence. I will not abandon it." He responded, "I would never ask you to. I seek your approval to join in as well. I want to create a life here alongside you and Owen if you'll accept me." The proposal blended practicality with romance, ideally tailored to both the man and the situation at hand. Evelyn sensed her final doubts dissolving into thin air. "They'll have plenty to say," she cautioned, a playful smile dancing on her lips. "People are always chattering," he replied. "It's time to provide them with something truly noteworthy." Her laughter faded as he enveloped her in his embrace. His kiss expressed all that words failed to articulate: honor, appreciation, longing, and an emotion that resonated profoundly, akin to the warmth of returning home. As they parted ways, Evelyn leaned her forehead against his chest, attuned to the rhythmic pulse of his heart. "Owen will be delighted," she whispered. "He believes you are nothing short of extraordinary." Remarkable commendation from a young man who previously viewed me as an adversary. Evelyn noted that children adjust more quickly than adults. At times, their perception of the truth is remarkably sharp. Within the barn, a lantern flickered softly as Owen maintained a watchful eye over the new mother and her foal. Soon, they would summon him, reveal their news, and embark on the journey of transforming from mere partners in survival into a true family. Yet, in this instant, it was theirs and theirs alone. Two souls who had discovered one another despite the challenges, united by scarcity and urgency, now connected through intention and potential. "We ought to head inside," Evelyn suggested after a moment, "and wrap up dinner preparations." In a moment, Blackwood responded, his embrace growing firmer around her. Certain moments are meant to be cherished. The clouds above dispersed entirely, unveiling a sky resplendent with stars. The very stars that had observed Evelyn's solitary watch on this porch, her weeping for miles, her anxieties about what lay ahead. The very stars that had led Blackwood to her gate on that fateful day, yearning for the water that would preserve his existence. Neither could have foreseen how that small gesture of goodwill would blossom into collaboration, into a sense of belonging, into affection. Yet, as they stood united in that moment, they acknowledged the truth that had gradually come to light. At times, the deepest changes arise from the tiniest decisions. A cup of water presented to an unfamiliar face, a hand reached out in unity instead of rivalry, a heart ready to embrace fresh opportunities after years of guarded solitude. As Matthew leaned in to kiss her once more, Evelyn beamed against his lips. Tomorrow will unveil fresh challenges, choices, and opportunities to shape the future they dreamt of. Yet this evening was dedicated to honoring new starts. It all began with water, the most invaluable resource in a dry and thirsty land. Water is essential for life, a force that unites a community, and a source of nourishment for the seeds of potential that, with dedication and bravery, can flourish into something remarkable and surprising, much like a garden thriving in what once appeared to be desolate soil.